How much of an impact can playing video games have on our mental health? Today, we're exploring the world of professional gaming and the challenges faced by young gamers who start their career at an early age. From addiction to burnout, we're going to take a look at the psychological impacts of the rapidly growing gaming industry. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And we're live. What's up? We're back. Show number, back. I don't know.
Yeah. Episode
Doesn't matter.
3000.
Yeah. I always thought it was strange. Like when you come on, like you listen to a podcast or something, they're like, welcome to episode 56. Like, who cares?
I listen to a couple podcasts that do like seasons. It's like the end of season 2. It's like, like, okay, you take time off. Cool. Like, just let me know about that. Don't have to call it a season.
Yeah. I always thought that was a little strange too. That like never really was my cup of tea as I was like watching shows, I guess. I mean, maybe it makes sense if like you're gonna take like a long break and you want people to not like be looking forward to your next season.
Right.
Who knows? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. What's on the topic of the agenda for tonight, Josh? What do you want to talk about? This is what you were like most excited about, right? This is kind of your idea, something you're passionate about, a little bit of a passion project.
This one's something that is close to my heart. We both love gaming. I'm a big fan of esports, so I want to talk about the world of esports, or professional gaming sports, for anybody who doesn't know what esports are, but also what other careers are available in the gaming industry and how it's currently approached from my perspective versus some more traditional careers or sports. So
I'll be honest, after all the stuff I spent reading kind of about a little bit of the literature around just like adolescent gaming and professional gaming, I'm kind of like scared to ever play video games again. I mean,
man, it's
crazy.
Well, it's different now because esports are what they are. Streaming is what it is. Video games are a different animal than what we grew up playing, right? Like
that is true.
They are and they aren't.
True.
But you know, I grew up playing Madden sports games that evolved to Call of Duty, and I love the competitive aspect of video games is near and dear to my heart from somebody who's also played team sports, right? Like you can get a competitive aspect in a completely different way. And I want to take a real deep dive into that. So we'll certainly get into it with this one. And with that being said, I guess one of the big questions for you is, what are your thoughts on esports? I know I've tried to introduce you to watching esports. Just what's your take on it?
I mean, I definitely enjoy them, but it's much more of a companion enjoyment for me. I've never watched esport for a game that I didn't personally play. Mm-hmm. I was never even Twitch in general has been like that for me, right? Like I've never watched. Sorry, I just saw Julia's comment in the chat, threw me off. I was like, wait, what did she? At first, I thought she said, "I can't hear you two." I was like, oh my gosh, we're muted. And then I like fully read it out of the corner of my eye. I can't wait to hear this one. Okay, so Julia's locked and loaded for this.
Perfect.
But so it was never like Twitch, esports. It was never something where I would watch for enjoyment. Like if I'm sitting down, I'm like, what do I want to do with my life? Let me go watch a video game that I don't play. The only time I ever started getting into it was when I was playing video games that I just wanted to get better at. You know, it started out as like YouTubing stuff. Like, hey, how do you do this better? And then you're like, oh my gosh, like these people are amazing at these games, right? And then you just apply it a little bit and you're like, wait a second, I just got better at this game. And like sort of was like this like mental unlocking of like, wait a second, like I'm in some level of control in this video game, like if I want to get better, I can study and learn and figure out how to get better, right? But I mean, like years, right? I've played video games my whole life, basically, right? It was always about like play more, get better. You're as good as you naturally are. It wasn't until like within the last 7 or 8 years, maybe, where I started realizing, like, wait a second, like, if you're not just as good as you naturally are, you're as good as you're willing to put time in to
learn.
And learn. And like that was when, like, it was like all of a sudden it was no longer a video game, right? It was like anything that people do that, you know,
anything where you want to get better. It's a skill, right?
Yeah.
There is a skill set involved, and there's a knowledge, and there's still a physical skill of some sort. There's mechanics and hitting a keyboard or a controller, but much less on the physical aspect. I think a lot of more of it is actually mental than some people may realize.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started for me too. I used to just watch Call of Duty clips when YouTube was becoming big. There's a channel called Machinima. They'd have like the top 10 Call of Duty kills, and I would watch that like weekly, monthly, whatever it released on. I don't know. It went from that to then live streaming became a thing until then I found League of Legends, which had a professional league all its own to watch and you know, pick up on things and learn and really just explore the game at a different level.
Yeah,
that's
been
my journey.
I don't think I ever got into I don't think I ever got into actually watching Twitch until I started playing like a ranked competitive game, and I was like, wait a second, I want to climb up the ranking ladders. But like, even though Twitch was out way longer than you know, prior to my you know, it'd been around a long time. It wasn't like I found it early on. It was just something where I just didn't care, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It was always secondary to playing the game itself to me. Like, it was never a form of entertainment, like pure entertainment.
Yeah, and that's where it became. It started to switch for me.
Stop playing video games. Yeah, I can somewhat relate.
Yeah,
my wife's probably like,
Yeah.
He said he'd quit when we had kids. She's like,
Right.
He said he'd quit when we get married. That's a lie. Then he said he'd quit when we had kids. That's a lie.
Oh,
maybe now is the time I quit, because after all the things I've read and watched in preparation for tonight about like just how video games affect kids today. I mean, it's like you said, it's different. Like, it's worse today. I mean, they like engineer games for addiction now, right? Because that's how they make money. Addiction equals money to these people.
They want people playing their game. They want people spending money on their game. They want microtransactions, right? And now every kid sees Ninja or you know, one of these streamers. It's like, I want to do that because they love watching it, right? And that's where it becomes, I think there needs to be a real level setting here of what do you want games to be to you?
Yeah. And I agree. This is exactly what I've been saying all along, is that once I have kids, I'm going to put them to work doing all the grinding and gold farming in the games that I don't want to spend the time doing.
That's another good buddy of mine has a couple of kids, and I just look at him every so often. I go, you're the future. Right? You're the future. The next generation of gamers.
Although I'll be honest,
right now,
there is a part of me that is like, I may never let my kids touch video games. It's crazy.
Well, all right. So when did
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Let's start from when did you start playing video games?
Oh God.
What was your first video game memory?
First video game memory. My somewhat estranged grandfather. I mean, estranged. I really met the guy like a handful of times in my life. Sent our family our first computer.
Okay.
It was a Windows 95,
Dell, compact,
whatever.
Hewlett Packard,
something like that.
Yeah.
My dad or somebody, I think, ended up picking up a copy of Myst on floppy disks.
I don't even know what that is.
Myst?
Yeah.
They've made a bunch of games. It was like one of the original ones, I think. MYST, maybe? Game? Is that what it's called? Let me see here. Missed Franchise Center series. And it was like an adventure. Like the first, it was kind of like a puzzle RPG on
Wasn't like a text-based RPG, right? Like those, I
no.
remember. I forget what that one was on computer.
Let's see here. Let's see. I think this is
Yes.
Yeah. First game of Myst released in 1993. So yeah, that was probably
Okay.
it.
All right.
An adventure video game. I had no idea what was going on. I just remember you'd kind of like walk around. I don't even know if it was like a WASD type of movement scheme or if you just sort of like clicked and went to different settings. I vaguely remember. But it was literally probably like 1993 Myst, if I had to guess. Yeah, this looks kind of vaguely familiar.
Huh. Yeah. See, I have no recollection of that.
Yeah. So like something like that was probably my very first memory. And then Sega Genesis was a big one. But honestly, you want to talk about Sega Genesis? That was probably my first real experience into like the pre-Twitch era of watching video games because my dad would play Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah.
And I loved watching my dad play it because he could play and do things I could never do. I was like 5 years old, right? And it was more fun watching my dad play the game than it was playing myself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's like,
we got Bishop here. Welcome, Bishop, to the chat. WoW is a completely garbage game from a competitive aspect.
He's not wrong.
What is Josh over here planting people in the audience?
But thank you for your comment, Bishop. I completely agree with you, and we will definitely
Carlos,
dive into
moderator? We need Carlos the moderator to ban this guy. No, I'm just kidding.
But I think
I agree. Here's the thing. WoW as a whole, yeah, it sucks. I don't know. I mean, you have this massive game, multi-million player. Oh, yes.
Hey.
All right.
Let's not say things we can't take back. All right.
Why don't we take a brief pause for an administrative update on the stream? Starting next week, not a Dr. Norty is going to be replaced by Bishop as my co-host. I'm just kidding. Although on that note, if you want to support our fundraiser, it is still ongoing. We're fundraising to support veterans with brain and spine injuries. Scan the QR code. You can head over to our YouTube channel, wherever, or on a brand new website, www.brainandspinegroup.org. If you want to support our nonprofit organization, that's why we stream. We stream to support brain and spine health. That's why we have all kinds of fun talking about different brain and spine topics. Bishop says wins. All right. So yeah, I mean,
well, it's funny you mentioned Sega Genesis because that's probably where my competitive gaming roots start. Right, like I had a Nintendo. I remember getting.
Tell me this story.
Yeah, well, so I had a Nintendo. First memory, I was 5 at the time. Got a Nintendo. Got Super Mario Brothers 3. I
never had Nintendo. Well, I had N64. I never had any of the preceding Nintendos.
I got a Nintendo 64, but for a long time I had my Sega Genesis, and I had like NHL 95 or 96, one of those. I'd always play against my friends and just beat them. But what really got its hooks in me was Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate Edition. And all I would do is I would spam Scorpion just to beat my friends. Like I would never even let it be close. I just pull them in, do the teleport backwards and uppercut them, and just do that on repeat. And I would get the timing down perfectly, and no one ever wanted to play against me. And that was the best. I loved just being better at a game than somebody else.
Yeah.
And then it escalated from there. Then things like Halo with Xbox.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Halo, the original Halo on Xbox, that was definitely a milestone in gaming development. I feel like we're fast forward. We got to relive the Sega Genesis, Nintendo 64 days.
And N64 had
not the purpose of the stream, by the way. It was just to rehash our childhood of playing video games.
This is
very quickly turning into that, but
yeah,
the goal is to really talk about the psychiatric impacts of gaming.
And we can jump way ahead to that because I remember so I eventually found World of Warcraft, right? And I didn't play it. I enjoyed the leveling aspect. I never touched arenas. I never touched it for a competitive aspect. And then I found Wreckful, Byron,
Yeah,
right? I forget
I
his last name.
never. I mean, I know who you're talking about, but
Yeah.
yeah, I never like experienced Wreckful live.
He was the reason I wanted to play World of Warcraft competitively. I wanted to be a rogue, and I wanted to
I
be
hate
awesome
every
at it.
word that's coming out of
I
your mouth
wanted,
right now.
and I always hated being a rogue, but what he did was so crazy to watch, and he was really what got me into watching somebody else play games. Right, like that's what got me into really like watching what he was doing and just watching somebody play a game in real time. And we know what happened eventually. Like Reckful was the rogue. He was known for arenaing. That's what he did. And this is like a few years ago. I don't think he played much WoW anymore. I know he was developing his own game of some sort, but he eventually took his own life, right? And this dude was our age. And it makes you wonder what's going to happen, because the video game industry as it stands right now is these kids get into it even if they hit a professional level, right? Like the careers are very short-lived, and if they're not prepared to take it into a different path than a professional sport or even a streaming career, if that's not what they want to do, or if maybe they're not cut out for that, because I do think there's very different things that are involved to be good at both. What's going to happen when they have no tangible like work experience, or people that play video games aren't necessarily the most outgoing or charismatic or sociable people, right? What happens when they become very isolated after they no longer have a career for the thing that they loved?
And I mean, the other thing too that makes professional video games different from, say, being a professional football player or whatever.
Mhm.
Like football will always be there, right? You will age out of being a professional football player, right?
Yeah.
You may be a running back. You
Mhm.
may be Ezekiel Elliott, who was the greatest running back ever for like 2 years. And then, I mean, as much as I love the guy,
Yeah.
he ain't doing much right now.
But
And the thing is, but like football will always be there. You can transition,
Mhm.
right?
And
I
you
mean,
probably got a college education because of it if you've made
yeah,
it to the NFL level, right? Or
yeah,
at least in some form or fashion, like
yeah.
you got something that you can then leverage into something else.
In terms of like college education, I mean, esports seemingly is slowly
It's
moving in
getting
that
there.
direction. Like
It
some
is.
colleges are offering scholarships, but the
But
thing is, it's like,
the ones who are going professional are
yeah,
doing it at the age of, 15, 16 years old.
yeah. I mean, well, actually, you got a college education because of it. That's true. I mean,
Well,
don't get
I
me
mean,
wrong.
the goal is that
I
you never have to use your college education if you're playing in the NFL, right? Like that's the goal.
I
Um,
mean, I knew a lot of very good athletes in college that were not great students.
but
Some of them, I
you
feel like
get
it's
what I'm
hit or miss.
saying, right?
I feel like a lot of them, they like, because they're great athletes, they have those like self-drive skills where their college education, like they're the type of college educated person who really just needs the piece of paper. Like they're going to go out in the world and figure it out anyway. And that's where you get those like prior
And
D1 athletes, never went pro, but did really great things in their life. And then you get those guys where they like sold out for the sport, but they're not good enough to go pro. But then it's like, well, they're not. I've seen traditional athletes go both ways, I guess is my point.
and that's fair. And I guess the bigger issue that I foresee with esports currently is I don't think these kids are going to get the most out of esports or video games that you could of a traditional sport with the
Yeah,
current landscape.
the
And because
intangibles.
traditional sports like
Yeah,
team sports, you learn skills that you can apply elsewhere. Like
yeah,
I'm a firm believer of that. Like playing football, baseball, basketball, you're in a team environment, you get coaching, you
yeah.
you try to get better, you get work ethic from it. Like you can get those same things out of a video game if you don't necessarily have the physical capabilities of somebody that can play these sports or desires to play these sports. You eliminate that physical aspect.
I
And
think,
I
and
think
that's
that's the bigger
that
issue.
makes
And
a
it's not
really
even
big difference.
addressed. Yeah.
Huge difference. And we're not even the first people to bring this up. I mean, there's multiple YouTube clips of like basically Joe Rogan and like Andrew Tate saying basically the same things. They're like, you could be the best video game player in the world, but like when it's all said and done, like you have nothing to show for it, right? Like maybe if you were like really, really good, yeah, you got some money in a bank account, but you're not
how much realistically
stronger, faster. I mean, here, let's.
Well, these contracts, and I don't know what the average esports contract looks like, but I guarantee you it's nothing close to an NFL contract for like a league minimum. And I think the NFL is a good comparison because I think the average tenure of an NFL player is 3 years. You think of how many people come into the league and go out.
Yeah.
And same with esports. You're walking away with pennies.
I mean, I think this clip kind of covers it perfectly.
I don't know if you can show Andrew Tate anymore. It might get canceled. And it is a good point. Yeah, the video's muted, by the way.
Oh, the video's muted?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't make any sense.
I was reading it, but
I guess with the subtitles, it's largely irrelevant. But
yeah,
I don't know why it's muted. That's weird. The screen share wasn't muted.
I mean, what he's saying is
shared. Oh, sorry. There we go. Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
But in no way are we endorsing Andrew Tate. I have no idea. Supposedly the guy's like locked up in Romania for human trafficking. Okay,
don't endorse that.
Scumbag. I honestly don't know, nor am I endorsing it. But I just thought when I was looking up people's perspectives on professional gaming, I thought he had some salient points to make.
Well, it is, right? And that's the other issue of like, in order to become that level of a gamer, or at least the perceived way to do that is by grinding it out for probably 16 hours a day, which I think is wildly unhealthy. And I think they would actually be better if they took a step back, maybe did a physical activity, maybe, got their mind right and got their bodies a little healthier. You'd probably be better at video games, because I do think it's a mental game as well.
I brought this up maybe, I don't know, ask my friends. I had to have brought this up in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, the way they make like World of Warcraft like a real game would be like if you had to go to like a Blizzard World of Warcraft check-in center once a week and like do a physical fitness test, get like weighed, do like push-ups, pull-ups, run a mile, and they take all your biometrics and like insert them into the game and adjust your in-game stats based on your real life stats. So it's like, if you want to get better at a video game, like playing the video game is not the key to getting better. Going to the gym and pumping iron, going out for a run.
Force them to go outside.
What's that?
Force them to go outside.
Exactly.
Right?
Like imagine a video game where like the strength of your character was like dictated by like your real life abilities. Like if you're like a Navy SEAL in real life, like your just ability to go out and just assassinate people in a video game would be off the charts. Like imagine like instead of Wreckful, you literally have like a guy from like SEAL Team 6 with like absurd like rogue stats, and he's just like sneaking up on people. He's just
crazy legendary.
That's weapons. A video game, my friend. That is a video game. I would play the heck out of that video. Well, I'd be out running and like. I mean, meanwhile, you got what's this? Hold on. What's this person's name on Twitch? Wow, Grandma, I think. Something like that. There's some like old lady on Twitch.
There's a few of them. Some that play like Fortnite and stuff too.
Check this out. Look at this. This lady's like literally like in her like 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sitting here. I think if you turn on her stream, she like definitely sounds like she probably like chain smokes like 2 packs a day.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
The
crazy.
perfect
Somebody
gamer.
like this would just get mowed down by like some guy from SEAL Team 6 if the game was actually based on like real life stats. Like this person wouldn't even be able to move. They'd just be like stuck in a corner.
Well, and this is the other thing too, right? Like what avenue you're trying to go down when you're playing video games. I think there's three buckets you can have it fall into, especially if you're an up and coming kid, right? And I think it's important to set the expectations early. In a previous life, I was helping a friend of mine develop this type of stuff for um, parks and rec departments, and I was helping him build this out, like an idea of how when kids are going there and they're spending time, right? I think it's important to level set, just like you would anybody playing a sport, right? Are you looking to go professional? Do you want to be the best World of Warcraft grandma to ever exist, or do you want to try and become a streamer? Are you entertaining enough and have the personality to be a streamer, or do you strictly want to have it as a hobby where you play it for
Yeah.
fun? What did Julia say?
She says the old lady could have high stats because of her advanced wisdom. She won't be able to move because she doesn't have a hip, but man, her spells
Be
hit
be
super hard.
a great mage.
She'd make a great mage with a just super buffed intellect,
Mm-hmm.
apparently. But I mean, I don't know.
Because it can. I think Joe Rogan talked about it too. They can be very addictive. Like they're designed to be
Yeah, I have a
addictive. So
Joe Rogan clip too. Let's
how do
see. I think
you
I
how do
found
you
a Joe
manage it in a
Rogan
healthy
clip.
way?
Here we go. Joe Rogan clip.
And then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them. And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun. And you don't, yeah, well, I have a real problem with them. And you do them and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere. They
You're muted now. I can't hear you.
I said that's exactly right. They're real fun. They're real excited, and you don't get anywhere. So,
Yeah,
and the thing is, I mean, here's the thing, right? Put things in two different buckets. You've got the like top 1%, the professionals. Then you've got, I would say, like the top 30%, 40% even, right below that top 1%. They're the people who all are really genuinely want to be that top 1%, but they're not.
Mhm.
And that's where you get a lot of depression,
Yep.
a lot of
Because when that becomes your identity.
This is actually who is somebody. Oh, there was this video I was watching. Oh, we got to put the link up for this. Hold on, let me find it. There was a link to a video I watched. This one. Oh yeah, it was this one. Actually, maybe copy link. Let's put this one in the chat for everyone. This video basically talks about exactly this. Well, part of it is talking about basically like the intermittent reinforcement. The same thing that causes gambling addiction basically causes video game addiction. And
Yeah, you pick up a request. You do. Yeah. That's why they're engaging, right? Like you pick up a quest, you do the quest, you get a reward, you're happy for a minute, and then you got to go do another one and another one and another one until you've got all the gold and all the mounts and all the achievements, right? It makes sense.
Like,
I don't think all games are developed that way, but a good amount.
All competitive games that I can think of. I mean, the League of Legends competitive ladder is developed that way. The Heroes of the Storm competitive ladder was developed that way. And I don't think it may not be developed that way, but the nature of it is such that it must exist in that way.
Yep.
Right? So you're taking kids and you are, I mean, that's the same problem you have with social media. I mean, you want a YouTube documentary that blows your mind. What was that one? I think it's called like The Social Mind or something like that. Steve and I were talking about it for a while.
I think
we
both
watched it and like threw our phones out the window. We said we're never touching social media again.
It's like the social media experiment or something like that.
I don't remember what it is. Social media YouTube documentary, or maybe it's Netflix documentary. Let's see. Watch The Social Dilemma.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let me see if there's a way I can put this in. I guess we could put like a trailer from YouTube. The Social Dilemma trailer. The Social Dilemma. Oh, this is it right here. I won't play it. I'll just put the link in the chat for everyone if they want it. But basically, the whole point is, right? Video games, social media, it's all being built basically around trying to leverage the psychology of addiction in order to keep people scrolling, in order to keep people queuing in a competitive game, right? I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, Heroes of the Storm would like, you go through like lose. And you're like, I hate this game. I'm never playing it again. I'm moving on. I'm going to go out and do things. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to get sunshine. I'm going to live my life. You're like, but I'm going to play one more. And then you play one more.
One more game.
Win. You're like, oh man, okay. So I got one win. I got to win back. And now I got to start thinking I can win back everything I just lost.
Yep.
And then you win again. You're like, yes. And then by the time you reverse the lose streak,
you're back to where
by then now you've won 10 games in a row. And you're like, I am the greatest player to ever play the game. No one can beat me. I can play as many games as I want, and I will never lose. But the reality is, if you do the math, you're still net zero, and you've just wasted 15 hours of your life.
Yeah.
Because you were in a hole, you dug yourself out of a hole, and then what happens? You just dig yourself another hole.
And that's where I feel like if esports is going to survive, if gamers are going to have longer careers, if it's going to turn into something real, like I think treating it more like a sport versus that competitive landscape that you just laid out, there needs to be a separation somehow. There just has to.
I mean,
playing 50 hours a day and just grinding video games.
The thing is, like, imagine a sport where imagine like a real sport where you never. Well, I think this is actually a big difference. Maybe not. Because maybe if you look at like tennis or something. This is something I thought about today. Video games, even team-based video games, are set up in a way such that solo queue, right? And so the idea is like the team is constantly changing. So unless you are the top 1% playing with a set team, right? You're an individual at the mercy of other random people trying to control the world around you, right? Whereas when you're on a team and a set team, now the mentality becomes, how do we make the team successful, right? And you spend more time thinking and trying to function as a unit than you do as an individual who's just like, again.
And that's where I think there are different. You're right. When you're on a team, it is different because you're trying to get better as a team. However, when you're solo queued and going into it, the objective is to understand the game from a perspective where you can have the largest impact, right? How can I be more impactful? You don't need to make anybody else better. You need to be the most impactful you can be in whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah,
you can do that by studying the game and the map and everything, you know?
People have been spewing that crap on like healthy, mentally healthy competitive gaming on YouTube since like for the last decade. My point though is,
but if you're going to get better, if you're going to climb a solo environment,
we're not talking about how to climb. We're talking about the psychological health of an individual.
Right.
Not
if you want to get better, that's how you need to
do it.
If you want to keep it healthy, that has to be the perspective. Is you're like, I want to get better. How do I get better and make everybody else around me better as well?
Not this paper. Hold on. This paper. So I thought this paper brought up a really interesting point. So now we're getting into like an actual scientific paper looking at, talking about the psychological impacts of professional video game playing, because you have to think, right? Like we've said, we see the top 1% when we're looking at professional video game players, right? We don't see the climbing to the pinnacle to be the 1%. And what this paper talks about is the shift of what they've seen and how basically once someone's in that competitive professional landscape, they find that actually, so basically to get there, it's all about intrinsic factors, right? Internal drive to be better, internal drive to play more, to practice, yada, yada, yada. And then you get to the top and it becomes, there's still some internal factors, but you start getting many, many more external factors that influence the behavior of the individual. Prize pool money, team
sponsorships, I assume.
Well, and what they found is actually, you know, the social bonding of the professional team helps, from my interpretation, kind of helps extract the individual from the constant
isolation,
intrinsic influences that create the addictive pattern of behavior.
I see what you're saying.
So it's almost like these children exhibit addictive behavior to get to the top. But then when they get to the top, it's almost like they've broken free or like have achieved escape velocity and sort of they no longer need addictive pattern behavior to exist at the top and to live a healthy life at the top. Right? They become more like that professional athlete. Like they have their times where they go to team practices or they practice with the team and they're focusing on certain things. And then they're taking care of their body and recovering or whatever the case is, you know, mentally recovering. Right. But to get to that point, you're sitting in a closet exhibiting pathologic behavior for 10, 15 years.
And that's a perfect reminder of, you know, the 1% being there. It's that bulk is the one that's really trying to get there. And what unhealthy habits are they doing to get there? And I do think the unhealthy habits exist at the top 1% and probably much more in the lower percentage of people trying to get to that spot. Like, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. Like, I'm sure they exhibit behavior because now you have money, you've made it to the top. You can take a breather and you're not at risk of being out with nothing and not reaching your dream. And it's a slippery slope.
It is,
you know, like,
because
that's what I worry about.
How do you live your life being like, well, it's like the top or nothing, you know?
Yeah. And even again, like I still think, you know, if you're dedicating everything to get to that point, even if you make it for a little bit, what happens when it goes away? What happens when you get replaced? What happens when you aren't entertaining enough to be a streamer? There's not really like a ton of coaching jobs for esports that pay well. Yeah.
Even if you are entertaining enough to be a streamer, what do you do when the parent company pulls funding from the game?
Right.
The game collapses overnight, right?
Right.
Football will always be there. Soccer will always be there. Tennis will always be there. Even if you can't play, the industry will always be there.
Right.
This, like, to put your stock in that game, Fortnite, League of Legends, whatever, even though there's plenty of professional pathways after playing, right? Going into broadcasting, going into coaching, going into streaming, professionally evolving from being a player. The fact that they can just yank the game overnight, like, that's crazy to me. And the thing is, like, I would expect somebody to be depressed, anxious, nervous, because once they realize this is the life they live, and they're like, wait a second, like tomorrow it could all be gone. What if
it was an outlet for them too? You know, what if the game was an outlet and that was their happy spot, now it's gone. Right. Yeah. Like, because there's some people that just want to play one game or maybe one specific type of game. And sometimes those skills are transferable. Sometimes it's not at all. And what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And
I mean, some people do transition. Plenty of people do, right? I don't think we're talking about like this affects most people.
No.
This affects less than most people, but probably more people than if you looked at who struggle with this out in the general population.
And the big, I think, fear for me is from somebody who enjoys watching esports. I want to see it succeed. I know what video games were to me as a kid, and even to this day, is This is a billion-dollar industry that is setting kids up for failure or
I agree with that statement.
real world issues coming out of it.
I definitely agree with that statement. It is a billion-dollar industry that is setting people up for failure.
Yeah,
That
especially
does
like
not mean that people are not successful,
Nope.
right? Because like there's this Netflix documentary. I didn't finish watching it, and they like basically kind of highlighting all these people and like their stories. Like I was playing video games all the time, and my parents told me I was throwing my life away. Blah blah blah. And then they announced the Dota prize pool is $1 million, and you know I became the 1%. It's like okay, great. I'm
That's
happy
great.
for you. What
Yeah,
do you?
and
What about the other 99% of the people who didn't make it? They're like these people have like I mean, especially as the people who believe that maybe they could be the top 1%.
yeah, and I think
Schmucks like me at the bottom who never believed they could actually be the top
Yeah.
percent, contrary to what I would probably tell people, even though I'm like, I'm the best player in the world. Right? The reality is it was at no point ever where I was like, I could make a career out of this.
and
right?
that's I think that's the with the
It would be
rise.
nice to make a career out of it. Or not. I don't know. I mean, we're
I
kind
think-
of saying that it wouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think what really set it off and what's the dangerous part of this is the rise and success of live streaming video games. Twitch, YouTube, people that were good in the scene before that existed, and once it became a thing, they were ready for it and almost lucked into it. And I use the term luck, like they didn't get lucky. They're entertaining people. They understood how to monetize their brand and they did it very well. And they were skilled enough at video games that made people want to watch. So I use the term luck loosely there, but right time and right place.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is what it is. So there's no direct path to that. If that's what you want to do, there's a lot of luck involved. And these kids that do believe it, what happens when that luck never comes?
Yeah.
You know, that's the bigger issue. Because again, Reckful was the top 1%. He was. And he was so successful, made enough money where he was developing his own game. And like something happened. And I do think it's the nature of gamers where like we're isolated. You know, we are. And that's scary.
There was I saw this video. I just randomly came across it. Let me see if I can find it.
Mm.
There's this guy. I'd never heard of him before. Just some random guy who basically was like one of the best.
Mhm.
And literally just quit because he's like, even though I'm the best, like everyone in my every relationship in my life is falling apart. Like it wasn't even rewarding to be the best. And that's I guess, that's what these guys are always talking about, right? They're like, what do you have after when it's all said and done? You have nothing. You're not stronger, you're not faster, you don't have personal relationships. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've met plenty of people playing video games that have turned into real life friends, and our friendship goes far beyond playing video games. And there's tons of stories. Go look on YouTube. You'll find tons of people out there.
Of course.
But I don't know.
There's good in it, but the reality is when people want to be at the best or be a professional streamer, every streamer has said that they had to stream 16 hours a day, all day, every day in order to hit that goal, right? That's not healthy. And I don't think everybody can do it or shouldn't even try realistically.
I mean, let's take a step back, even just from like this idea of like making it to the professional level, making it to the top, being a streamer, what about the people that literally like they are just general population, middle of the pack. They're not going anywhere. They're just purely sucked into an activity because it is leveraging.
That's where it's
addiction.
That's where it's an actual addiction, right? Like that's somebody who's trying to treat it as a hobby, and it's an unhealthy addiction.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what Joe Rogan's saying. Joe Rogan was never like getting into the professional scene.
No,
He's
he's
basically
just
like, it's too fun. Like
Yeah.
it literally, like, I can't stop.
he has talked on his podcast many times about how he just wouldn't do anything other than play Quake. And he loved playing Quake because it was so much fun. And he just wanted to like run around and play Quake all day. He's like, it's all I thought about. He's talked about that openly. So he's like, I just couldn't. He's like, I would just do it with all my free time, and I had to remove it. Just like any addiction, honestly.
I watched a longer YouTube. Wait, hold on. Did I put the? I watched like a longer YouTube, kind of like documentary on this guy talking about stuff. Let's see what he has to say.
My situation, I got to a point where I realized that building my virtual character in the world of Warcraft was just not really going to lead anywhere. It was a lot of fun, I enjoyed the social elements, but ultimately building my real life character is where I decided to focus my energy. And over the last 10 to 15 years, I've really been able to make a lot of progress personally. My situation.
That wasn't as interesting as I thought it might be.
Yeah, that's like, you should have kept playing World of Warcraft.
I mean, that just supports my idea. That just supports my idea that you should have to use your real life metrics to power yourself up in game.
It's not a bad idea. But I do think, I almost wonder if there should be like playtime limits, like force people to just get off of their account and go do
something. Now we're talking about like some like Chinese communism level stuff. I mean, I don't support that in America.
I mean, but what if somebody's like, or at least like flag their account, like, hey, this person's playing like an unhealthy amount. Maybe just like give them like a hey.
Give them a hey.
Call this number. You might need a little help. Like 1-800-GAMBLER.
You know about like how Twitter was shadow banning people? They could like shadow ban their queues so like games stop popping.
Yeah. Losers
like,
queue. They'll put you in losers queue
for 2.5 hours. It just doesn't pop.
Yep. Yeah, now we're on to something.
Well, here's the thing. I believe that, I don't know. There was a part of me that thought like HOTS would do stuff like that. Like Heroes of the Storm had to have like shadow cursed.
No, they said no one playing their game. There's a difference.
No. This was back years ago when people were playing. I'm telling you, like there'd be times it was like a switch would get flipped on your account and it's like you're done for the season. You are never allowed to win again for the entire rest of the season. They're like, he's played too many games for the season. He's not allowed. I'm telling you, they must have used to do
Blizzard would do that.
They would. They probably would.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is, it's like, if we're developing games in social media, because I think this goes, the thing is, are we talking about video games? Yes. However, I think the problems we're talking about of like anxiety, depression, addiction, all these things sneaking into the behavior of video games sneaks into the behavior of social media, right? I mean, it's probably much more insidious for girls than boys.
Well, and let's be very clear. Like all of these things are now in front of kids from basically the time that they're born as well.
I think the CDC just posted some like insane stats on like depression in adolescent girls or something like that. Like absurd numbers. Like something like 45% of girls are contemplating suicide. And it's like, the things that Instagram is doing to young kids is crazy. But like, what are you going to do about it? Right.
That's the question. Because I mean, all this stuff is still fairly new when you really think about it. All of this stuff is still so new. Like, yeah, it's established. Yeah, people know about it, but like, it's still so new in terms of how are you going to regulate this type of stuff going forward so it doesn't become a real issue.
I'm trying to see here. These are the stats. Facts about mental disorders in U.S. children. Let's see if this is it. Looks accurate. Some of these conditions commonly occur together. Children with anxiety. No, that's not depression and anxiety have increased. Facts about mental health in U.S. children.
Depression? There's the one that says depression.
Yeah, I was looking. There's one that like breaks it down by gender that I thought was like crazy. I'll keep looking. This is not
Yeah.
it. I mean, this is the CDC book.
Mhm.
That's not what I was talking about. U.S. children diagnosed anxiety. Maybe this.
Because I do think that these things need to be addressed early and often as like kids want to be more involved with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's my solution. Like, just needs to be addressed. Talk about it. Same thing we talked about with before. It's like let's talk about it. Let's address it.
Okay, but let's take this from the perspective of like, all right. I mean, talk about it. Talking about things doesn't change them. How do you actually change it? What do you do differently? Do we tell? I mean, we don't like kids gamble legally.
Yeah.
Well,
I know there are age restrictions for games where you can play in tournaments. Like it's like 13. I don't think you can stream on Twitch.
Is there a game
still young.
Is there a game with age restrictions on playing ranked ladder?
I don't think so. I don't think there's age requirements. I think that's a great. I think that would be a good place to start.
I mean,
there's age requirements to play.
I mean, it's gonna be hard to regulate, right?
Yeah.
People that are,
but at least
those like parents will make an account or whatever the issue is, and then you'll get like some 12-year-old kid playing on another person's account.
At least it's having like the parents sign off on it in some form or fashion and know what's going on.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Like I played Call of Duty when I was far too young, and I loved it. It didn't become a problem for me.
But the issue is then it not becoming. I mean, that was like games having like ratings. And,
right.
It used to be a type of thing. Like as a kid, you couldn't just walk into a rated R movie. Now kids can probably do whatever they want.
I
assume. Like I don't think like there's a kid that could go to a movie theater. The movie theater would just be like so happy to have business these days. They'll like let a 5-year-old walk in to go see like Freddy Krueger, by themselves, unchaperoned.
Yeah.
But I mean, games have always had ratings, right? But could you actually? I mean, shy of making something illegal, but which I don't necessarily support. I think China does not allow children under 13 on TikTok.
Yeah, they also have some type of like restrictions for that. I think they implemented it fairly recently.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't even China. Maybe it was another country, but like somebody implemented that, like a restriction, a time limit restriction.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big benefits that I've heard about. I mean, this looks the ICD-10, which is like basically like the endorsed, all the like officially endorsed diagnoses in U.S. medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Added gaming disorder or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When was this? Gaming disorder is an official medical condition. That's not an official website. Let's find an official website.
But it's classified as like a disorder of some kind? Or
yeah, it's fairly not like, I think within the last couple of years. Let's see. Gaming disorder. 11th revision that I see. So ICD-11 included gaming disorder. This is the first time. Impaired control over gaming, increasing priority given to gaming over other activities to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities, continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. For gaming disorder to be diagnosed, the pattern of behavior must be sufficient severity to result in significant impairment in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, or other important areas of functional and would normally have been evident for at least 12 months. Okay. Don't care about any of that. What is the actual criteria, though?
I think that was it.
No.
It's not like, do they list out?
Yeah. I'll see if I can find the actual criteria. See if we can diagnose me with gaming disorder. Gaming disorder. Diagnostic criteria. But the thing is, you could probably take this same disorder And instead of gaming, you could probably apply it to social media and see that the criteria is probably holds true for the average adolescent or heck adult for that matter.
Yeah, I mean,
so like, what do you do about that, right? What do you do? What do you do when something that has become so ingrained in society, right? Technology, social media, and video games. Because in a way, right, with the way that pretty much most, I mean, you don't really have these like discussions of people having severe gaming addictions with offline single player video games. Maybe it's out there, but that's rare, right? We're typically talking about online, socially interactable video games. So in a way, video games are just a different form of social media. Facebook and World of Warcraft are the same thing. The same thing. It's no different. You have friends, you interact with those friends, and if you produce good content, you get likes or more people hitting you up to do things.
Yeah.
Video games are just social media. That's all it is.
I mean, that's true.
I mean, video games.
Well, like, at least they can be used the same way or engaged with the very similar ways.
I mean, I think the point is they kind of are.
They're designed to be,
Yeah, exactly. It's very different. I mean, don't get me wrong. TikTok is not World of Warcraft, but
right. But like the concepts, I think you laid out the fact like the concept is very similar.
Underlying concepts are virtually the same. Bishop is convinced for a fact someone. I'm trying to find the diagnostic criteria. I don't know why Josh is just sitting here in silence while I look for the diagnostic criteria.
I'm waiting anxiously for that.
There's a reason. There's a reason it's called LOL. That is true.
Great game. Great game. You find it?
Maybe.
Well, with that being said, I mean, what do you think is something that could help curb this for the better?
I think we need to burn technology to the ground.
Just EMP everything?
Yeah, I think we need to just destroy technology.
What piece of technology are you getting rid of first?
Everything. You'll be able to reach me by carrier pigeon or send smoke signals. I'll be out camping. Let's see. I think this may be the answer to our question. According to DSM-5, clinical diagnosis of internet gaming disorder. See, they classify it as internet gaming disorder. Indicated by endorsing 5 or more of the following 9 criteria. 1, preoccupation with online/offline gaming. Preoccupation? What does that mean? Like, what do they mean by that exactly?
Like if they're preoccupied with online gaming?
Yeah, like, how do you determine someone is or is not preoccupied? I don't know. If you had someone that worked for you and had an addiction to video games that was so severe that instead of working, he was watching someone else play video games on Twitch. Is this Josh? Is Josh
I've never done that in my life.
Never done that at work?
Never one time. I don't leave up a second monitor and keep it on the side while I'm doing work activities. Never. I'll never do such a thing. I would never be so preoccupied.
What would I do? I'd probably just fire him.
Yeah, that's a smart move. That's a smart play.
I definitely would. Let's see. Criteria number 2. Experience of unpleasant symptoms when gaming is taking away. Withdrawal. Have you ever withdrawn from video games, Josh?
No, not once.
Not once?
No.
Never?
No, I don't never had gaming withdrawals. I also don't have an addictive
I don't.
personality.
I don't even know what gaming withdrawals even.
Yeah, what would you like get itchy? Like, I gotta play. I gotta get one more game in. I have done one more game. I've been like, one more game. Yeah, just one more game. I've done that a few times back in the day. But
Yeah.
I've never like gotten anxious from not playing a video game.
I don't think I can honestly say no to that question. I've definitely like when I'm like really been sucked into a game. I mean, man, definitely. All right. So let's see. I think I'm up to 2 criteria. My diagnosis is imminent. The need to spend increasing amounts of time engaged in games. I can play. I mean, I could sit there and just spam queue LFG arena games.
See, that's the
Hours
thing. Like,
till 4 o'clock in the morning.
And you know this. Like, I have to take breaks. Like, I hit a point where I'm just like, nah, I gotta like, I'm done. I gotta step away. I can't do it.
Nope. Okay, so I'm 3 for 3. Unsuccessful attempts to control participation in games. Loss of control. Well, I have been mind controlled into a wall many times.
I've gotten disconnected from getting mind controlled into a wall. I'm not happy about it.
Unsuccessful attempts to control participation in games. I think yes.
Attempts to control participation. Yeah, when people like are bad teammates, is this what it's saying? I can't control them, or is it saying what is it saying? That's how I'm reading it.
No, I think I'm reading this as like you want to not play and you are unable to make yourself not play.
No, I could do that. Even if I want to play, I could just not. I'm good there.
I can at times, but has there been instances where you can't?
I definitely think there's been times where I'm like, I should go to bed. I can't without playing one more game. Like, I just got to get a win. I just got to get a win, and I'm not stopping.
I think that's their idea. Yeah. It's not every time. I mean, there's people where it's every time.
Yeah.
Okay, loss of interest in previous hobbies and entertainment as a result of, and with the exception of games, giving up other activities.
I've definitely passed up doing social activities for games, 100%.
Yep, 100%. So far, I think
that's just because I don't like doing other stuff.
Continued excessive use of games despite knowledge of psychosocial problems. Definitely. 100%. I'm officially diagnosed. Yeah. With that criteria, I'm officially diagnosed with gaming disorder. Internet gaming disorder.
All right. Well, what do we do about it? How do we get you help?
I think I need to go to a meeting or something.
All right. Well, let's start a meeting up. Next week,
bring Josh's girlfriend on as a guest for this chat. Oh, that's true. What would Vanessa say if she was answering these questions for you?
She'd probably say yes to all of them. It's just not factual information.
Julia's laughing hysterically, I'm sure.
You hear cackling downstairs?
Deceiving family members, therapists, or others regarding the amount of gaming. Yeah, 100%.
No.
100%. Julia says, true. True. Use of games to escape or relieve negative moods. 100%.
I do that. Absolutely.
100%.
Yep. That one's big time. That's why I play video games. It's
jeopardizing or losing a significant relationship, job, or education or career opportunity because of participation in games. This is probably the least clear for me, but I will say the reason I would give myself 9 out of 9 criteria. I'm a maniac, dude. I'm a maniac.
I've played games with you.
It's because I think in hindsight, I could have been. There are periods of my life where I could have been a better student.
Oh yeah,
I was a worse student because of it.
I was awful when I played World of Warcraft.
My thing is like I would call myself a relapse remitter, right? That's it. I admit it. On live stream, recorded. Julia had printed it in the chronicles of history.
You're never living this one down.
Self-diagnosed. I guess I can only play Heroes of the Storm.
That's worse than WoW.
I wish I really do recommend that people watch not that. This guy, his what was the name? Oh, Game Over. I have to find it. It's that same guy. It's a different video though. It's not long. I think it was like 20 minutes. And it's just, I mean, look, do I love video games? Have I had my ups and downs with them? Yes. I've still managed to kind of like plug along and like these people, and this is like probably the typical addict speaking, right?
Yep.
Now my mother's like, listen to this addict justify his behaviors, right? There are people out there that take it's at a level that even I cannot comprehend, to the point where they're pretending to have jobs. Like this guy was saying how he'd like tell his parents he had a job, and they'd like he'd have them drop him off in the parking lot, and they'd pull away, and then he would like pretend to like walk in and then go out, catch the bus home, sneak in through his window and like play video games in his living room or in his room, and then sleep. And it's like, I love playing video games and I have a problem, but like, I mean, the worst thing I ever did when I was like a junior in high school, my dad took my computer away from me and I screwed the front door shut so he couldn't get in. That was a little crazy. But ever since that moment, I feel like that was like my lowest moment. And then it's like, all right, I got to be an adult. I kind of grew up a little bit. Yeah. But there was an element of being very immature, right?
Yeah.
Like you're a child. The frontal lobe hasn't quite developed yet. I don't really have the ability to justify. Like, what did I think was going to happen, right? Oh, I'm going to do this and my dad's just going to leave me alone. No, it's stupid. Kick the door down like the Hulk. Like, rip my throat out. Anyway. I mean, it's a problem, right? When we're making, I don't know what we do about this social media dilemma, because honestly, forget video games. Yeah. I think this is the social media dilemma. Video games is just a subcategory of social media that affects boys and men much more than women. Go to Instagram. I mean, shy of some of those like probably like weird like beach Italian guys that are getting like calf implants and stuff for Instagram. I mean, the epidemic is far worse for women than men. I mean, it's terrible. And the same thing, right? It's social affirmation, right, creating this feedback loop of I think basically bottom line, social media, video games, they've all created this intermittent reward that is like scientifically proven in decades of behavioral research to lead to uncontrollable addictive behavior.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you don't know how it's going to affect somebody, and it's a normal part of life. And most people probably won't become addicted to it. Most people may not have these mental health issues from it, but there's going to be a lot that do. And
and when you look at the trends over time, it is trending up. It is getting worse. It is not getting better.
Right.
So we need to burn technology, burn it to the ground,
EMP.
Take the stream down, get rid of the computers. Let's go back to, handshakes and phone calls in the office. No more Slack, no more email, no more video games. Just throw it all in the trash. That's probably what happened, right? The Egyptians probably realized how horrible technology truly was because they were a society more advanced than ourselves. They destroyed all the technology, and we've only just rebuilt to the phase of technology that we're in. That's my conspiracy theory.
I would like to make it very clear that Egyptians definitely had alien technology, and they just got rid of it. Like, that's factual information. Yeah.
That is true. Facts. You heard it here first. Julia says,
what does Mrs. Rajabadowski have to say?
As Mrs. Dr. Rajabadowski.
Mrs. Dr. Rajabadowski's.
What does Julia have to say? I mean, I think briefly there was I just saw that in general, they've noted that in video game addiction, like structurally, they see that there is a smaller amygdala.
What's that?
What's that?
What's an amygdala?
Part of the brain. We can Google it, and I can show you a picture. It's not going to mean a whole lot because you're looking at that picture, and I'm looking at it. Amig.
What's a smaller one mean?
What do you mean? Like it's
You just said
there's an average size in the human population. They've shown that there's a statistically significant smaller volume of the amygdala in individuals with internet gaming disorder. So, I mean, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but basically this tiny little deep structure of the brain. They've shown that it's smaller in individuals with gaming addiction. I wouldn't be surprised if that's same for people with social media problems, because but my suspicion would be that it is probably the structural brain variation that leaves an individual vulnerable to developing addictive behavior.
Okay.
Rather than the addictive behavior causing
it to be smaller. It's just okay.
So there's probably, because that, right, it's just like these elements, right? People have varying susceptibilities to addictions, right? Like, for example, some people, I mean, when we think of addiction, right, we think of addiction from the perspective of like you're in and you need help to get out. Right. But then once you're out, you just need to stabilize, maintain, and you can never go back in. But there are people where they actually don't struggle to pull themselves out as much as somebody else. What they struggle with is constant relapse. Like, that's definitely like how I would view my own personal behavior, right? Like, many times, like when I'm like in too deep with a video game, like eventually I can kind of like slap myself, go out for a run, kind of like right the ship, and I just walk away from it. No big deal. Give it 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year.
I've heard you quit video games many a time.
I quit video games all the time, right? But then all it's going to take is eventually it just sucks you back in, right? Other people, though, they could never just will themselves out. They need someone to pull them out. And so there's clearly different behavioral patterns of addiction, I guess, is kind of the point too. And I think it's there. So there's biological predispositions for sure. 100%. What those actually are, I mean, other than just a brief little bit I read about, there being in correlation with a smaller amygdala. I don't know exactly what the biological. I mean, the point of this show is really more to talk about depression and the developmental negative impacts of video games, and we've sort of spun out into a little bit of a side focus on addiction, but
I mean they can go hand in hand, clearly.
They do right. But obviously my point was I didn't come to the table prepared to drill down into the biological evidence of addiction. So I don't, other than just a very brief statements. That's about all I really know. Should we get back to the fun conversation?
Yeah. Favorite non-multiplayer video game.
Non-multiplayer video game. Oh. That's hard because I've always been such a big multiplayer video game, even offline. I always wanted to play co-op games with my brother.
Yep.
Co-op
will count. Co-op is fine.
My brother was always the opposite, right? He's like such like a loner. Like, he always wanted to play video games by himself, leave him alone. I always wanted to play with him. I never wanted to play by myself. Always wanted to play with somebody. I don't know. Favorite. I mean, if we put like the original Halo in the like community video game category, because I think that was genuinely probably my first, even though it was all offline, like LANs at people's houses. That was the first game I ever played where it was like we had coordinated parties to like go get together at someone's house and have 16 people land up playing against each other. Right?
LAN party.
This was before the internet. I mean, the internet existed, and we played Warcraft 3 on the internet at the same time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. That was not like a massively popular game in my age bracket.
Yeah.
So pretty much anything preceding Halo 1 was my offline experience because I never really played that
Yeah.
after that. Right? It was like once I found internet games, like I rarely played anything offline.
Same. Once Halo 2, once that was like online Xbox Live, it was done.
Halo 2 was the weed that gatewayed me into.
That's where it all began.
Heroin of World of Warcraft.
Yep. Mine was Halo 2 into Call of Duty.
Yeah, I never played much Call of Duty, but I remember this awesome game I used to. I actually played it offline. I didn't play it online much. It was this game, Unreal
Tournament.
Not Unreal Tournament.
Yep.
Unreal Tournament was the PC game. They had Unreal Championship on the Xbox, and I thought that was super awesome.
Yep. And that was very similar.
Fable was a really fun.
That Unreal game was very similar to Quake. Like that's what I think it was Quake Champions, or maybe it even was Unreal Champions. That's what Joe Rogan was hooked on. It was something very similar to that.
That game was. I just remember being like so fast.
Awesome. I loved.
Yeah.
Yep. You just like pick up the little power ups and run around. Oh man,
the game was fun. That game was a lot of fun. But like these games, it was like you wanted to play. Like we went to a friend's house, right? And mom would like call you guys downstairs and have like bagel bites or something waiting.
Pizza rolls.
Yeah, you weren't just like vegged out in your room. I mean the other thing too about internet games, man. I remember like as a kid, it was like the first experience to like exposure to like things like way outside of my world. I was like a 12-year-old kid playing video games with like 30-year-old men, and sometimes 30-year-old women, and the things that they'd be talking about, you're just like, oh my gosh, right? It's different. It's different. I don't know if it's a good experience. It was a fun experience. I don't know if it was a good experience.
Yeah.
In hindsight.
I don't know if I'd recommend that to the younger generation coming up, but it was a fun time.
I mean, don't get me wrong. What's more fun now, being the 30-year-old man than going on the internet and just destroying the soul of a 9-year-old kid?
Oh, best feeling in the world.
Stomp them. And it's a blast.
Yeah.
All right, we got a comment from Lana. What are your thoughts on talk therapy or psychotherapy for video game addiction? I jumped a bit late, but might have already talked about. No, we haven't. I don't really have like concrete thoughts because I would say positive. I don't think I think
if there is a real addiction there, something should be done.
There are medications that are utilized for like alcohol addiction. Like there's very much like a population of medical providers, psychiatrists primarily, that look at addiction from much more of a biological perspective. Like how is the the biology of the brain, and how can you influence the biology of the brain to help address the issue of addiction. Now, usually that goes hand in hand with talk therapy, psychotherapy, right? There's not. I don't really think there's a world where you just like throw a pill at somebody with alcoholism or another form of addiction and it just goes away, right? That would be great, but it doesn't. Video game addiction, I think, honestly, is largely how you approach it is not terribly different. I think the only big difference is you're dealing with addiction in a largely adolescent child population, right? Whereas people who are addiction specialists are probably dealing with majority of adults with gambling, alcohol, smoking, opioids, things like this, right? So
traditional addictions.
Yeah. Although I think interestingly, because depression and addiction go hand in hand with video game addiction. But a lot of people are of the mindset where if you address the video game addiction, the depression will go away on its own. Whereas whereas other people are like, we'll just treat the depression like you would any other depression. I tend to be more conservative, especially when it comes to treating depression. Some people are like, why be conservative? The medications are relatively safe. The side effect profiles are generally very acceptable. Like, just treat the addiction with medication. My personal perspective, and again, personal, people can do what they want. And I think this is where, as a, if you're a patient, finding the doctor that matches your personal philosophy is the best way to approach this. My personal philosophy when you're talking about depression, especially this, is there's probably a lot of diagnosable depression that comes from extrinsic factors, environmental factors. I've had periods of my life where have been treated for depression or probably diagnosable but chose not to be treated, and it's because it was always very environmental for me. Like, my periods of life where I've gone through that, it was always very environmental. I know myself. I know what's going on, and what's going on is external factors are influencing me in a way where I'm not coping well with them, and I'm developing clinical depression because of it. Can you treat that with an SSRI? To some degree, yes. To some degree, no. And in my experience, it was not like you just take a pill and it goes away. Addressing the environmental factors are the most important thing. And so I think when you're dealing with video game addiction and depression together, I would be a huge advocate for address the environmental factor of addiction, see if the depression goes away, and if it doesn't, then start having the conversation of treating it medically. That would be my personal opinion on that. So in that sense, I think, going back to Lana's question, talk therapy, psychotherapy absolutely has a role, because now you're addressing the addiction before, and the depression, right? Because talk therapy, psychotherapy, very beneficial for depression. You're addressing those in a non-pharmacologic manner, and then getting into the reserving pharmacological intervention if it's not fully responding or refractory. Now, there are caveats to that, right? If you have a patient who's actively suicidal, that's a different situation, right? In general, that's not everyone we're dealing with. Travis, why are there so many cases of video game addiction, but none really for other media, movies, TV, music?
Even social media, like you mentioned before.
I think social media, there's emerging data coming out on it. So I think that's actually an issue. I mean, honestly, I'm convincing myself more and more that video games are just social media. Internet video games are just social media. They're just social media that's more enjoyable for boys, frankly. Why are there so many cases? So movies, traditional movies, TV, music, I don't think these things offer the intermittent reward mechanism that manipulates human behavior. Poker, gambling, these things include intermittent behavioral or intermittent reward that leads to addictive behavior. Movies, it's predictive, right? Like what? And I think there's a reason why offline video games are probably historically not as addictive.
Because it's more about the story. It's not so much about these keep playing and give us all your money.
No, it's that the rewards are often predictive, right? How are the games structured? The games are structured in a way where they are predictive, right? Okay. I do this, I get this reward, right? In let's think about a prime example, right? Just look at World of Warcraft. People are always saying, "Oh, I hate doing the chores," right? The chores are predictive behavior. I do this, I get this. There's no guessing, right? Now, why do people always make sure we'll go to extreme lengths to make sure they always get their weekly vault? Because now you start getting into the idea of intermittent reward. It's an unpredictable award, but when it hits, and you get a huge dopamine spike. And that huge dopamine spike will keep you coming back for more and more and more and more and more until you get that next unpredictable reward. It's the same thing. That's the idea of queuing. And that's why competitive games become addictive. Because you queue, right? Maybe you lose. Maybe you win. You win, dopamine. Then you queue again. You lose. Queue again. Lose. Queue again. Lose. Queue again. Win. Huge dopamine spike because now you just went through a drought. And you have no idea when the next win is going to come. The unpredictable nature of the reward is what makes the behavior addictive. That's what Skinner showed in rats, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. When was Skinner doing his rat experiments? I know there's got to be somebody in the chat.
Is that for the... Walk us through those experiments.
Skinner rat experiments. Let's see if we can find a video. Let's see. Skinner. Okay. I don't know his exact. I don't know how long ago this guy was alive. When was Skinner alive? Skinner. Time period. E.F. Skinner, 1904 to 1990. So he was probably doing some of these experiments like 1940s, 50s, 60s. Okay. Basically, what this guy showed, he used a lot of rats to examine how certain things influence animal behavior. And the idea is, pretty much a lot of what he's shown is very translatable to humans. And what he showed is, I think he put rats in a box and he put a little lever in the box that the rat could like hit with its paw. And he would create different schedules, right? Like maybe you hit it every third time it lets out
cheese or reward or something.
I know he did stuff with like alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. To like look at like how alcohol, he used different things, but the idea is the same, right? Like some sort of like physical reward would come out, right? And he did different programs, right? Like hit a thing, the reward comes out every time, right? In general, less addictive, right? It's predictive. Mm-hmm. The animal can just go up to the lever and hit it whenever they want something. They don't want it, no problem. I'll come back in 15 minutes. I'll get it then. Then it would do like, hit it 3 times, and every third time it would come out. And I think largely the behavior was roughly the same, right? Because it's predictable, right? Then the animal can come and get a sip of alcohol or food or whatever at a predictable path. It knows like all I got to do is like come over here, hit it 3 times, boom, I get what I want. Then what he did is he created this unpredictable random pattern where the animal could hit it once, something comes out, could hit it 5 times before something comes out. It didn't know what it led to. And there's these movies of like monkeys and pigeons and rats that they've repeated these experiments in, and they'll just sit there like rapid fire. They just hit their paw or whatever on the lever over and over and over for hours and hours and hours and hours on end because they don't know how many times they have to hit it to get the reward. Right? But then when the reward finally comes, huge spike of dopamine, and they're like, great, now I want another one. That's queuing a competitive video game. Right? You don't know when the reward is coming. So you will keep queue. Boom, win. Reinforce the behavior. Queue. That is standard behavioral, clinical behavioral analysis. Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's people who have make their entire career on leveraging this element of human behavior to manipulate human behavior, right? So you can do it to train dogs. You can do it to train children, to reinforce desirable behaviors, right? Obviously, we're talking about addiction in, poor behavior, right? But why did that why does social media leverage this? Well, because they're basically like, well, how do we keep people like we want their behavior to stay on our platform? How do we do it? Well, we make it so that way they don't know when the reward's coming. They're leveraging intermittent rewards to keep people using their social media platform, right? So they're using it for bad, for evil. They're using it to generate addiction to maladaptive behavior. The idea is, clinical behavioral therapies can leverage that to, in a way, create an addiction to positive behaviors, right? Like, without getting too far into it, like further details of how this types of therapies actually get used. Lana says, what would be the limit or the fine line? Video games can also have a positive impact, improve decision-making, visual memory, learning. 100%. I give my wife a hard time about this all the time. She never knows where she is in space. If she doesn't have a GPS, she doesn't have like a sense of like north, south, east, west. Like she's just become so adept at having a GPS to get places. Yes, she knows where, how to get to certain places without a GPS, right? But I've said all the time, like I have like almost like this mental map in my head. Like I go somewhere and I just sort of generally know like, oh, it's like off like, northeast, northwest or wherever. It's just like these studies they did in New York City cab drivers where they showed like their ability to generate a mental map of New York City was like insanely high. And I think video games do improve that ability among people better. I guarantee
I do think there's a lot of benefits. Yeah.
People who grow up playing video games, constantly reading a map and orienting themselves, I guarantee have a better sense of direction and where they are in space in a global sense than somebody who just never had that experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing like limit or fine line. I mean, there's a difference between somebody being able to go out and have one drink and somebody who has to go out and have 10. It's different for everybody, and it all comes down to, is it an addiction or is it just
I mean, there's plenty of ways to play video games that do not have intermittent reward systems built into them, right? Video games build intermittent reward systems into them. Social media, major social media platforms build intermittent reward systems into them. They're fundamentally built into the core of the design.
You bring up gambling too. And like, I'm not a big gambler either.
Yeah, but
not my thing.
Have you ever? I mean, is it something you are ever involved in?
Yeah, I've gambled. It's not my thing. And same thing with like,
given enough time though, and eventually it could be. Yeah. Right? What video game do you ever play where it like was instantly your thing?
League of Legends. But I could still cut it off if I needed to go.
Well, sure, but that's
do something else. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, obviously, this varies for other people. What I'm saying is that's how people get to these points.
Right, and that's what I get. And that was my point. Is I'm not a big gambler. I'm not predispositioned, I don't think, to be addicted to these type of things, but there's a lot of people that are. And either way, it's still fun for me, right? Yeah. Like gambling's still fun for me too, but it doesn't become a problem.
Yeah, I find no interest in gambling. Like
it's so fun. It's fun.
I can't even think of like a weekend I went to the casino. Like I used to go to Vegas every once in a while for
I've never been to Vegas.
For jiu-jitsu tournaments when I was competing with the Marine Corps. And like guys would always like, after the tournament, they're like, let's go to the casinos. I'd always just like go to the hotel and like crash. I mean, I'm like tired. I spent the whole day like doing jujitsu. Like I'm tired. My motivation to ever want to gamble is just like low. I don't know.
I had a buddy of mine who's a big gambler, and that's the thing. I would like set aside some money. Like if you want to go to the casino, I'd be like, all right, fine, we'll go. I'd put some money down. It was gone. I'm like, okay, time to go home. And he's like chasing the next dollar, and it's just like I'm good, man. I'm tired. I want to go. I want to leave now. Let's Let's
Who
not
was
do
that
this.
crazy like world champion poker player? I forget his name, but if I heard it, I
Oh
would.
man, I
You know what I'm talking
I
about?
know exactly who you're talking about. Chris Moneymaker.
Who?
That's his name.
No, not
I
him.
think his name something Moneymaker.
Best poker player.
For some reason, I want to say Pete Weber, who was a bowler. So type in Chris Moneymaker, man. That's who I remember from the World Series of Poker.
I want to say it's none of these names. This guy had like this crazy article written about him. I bet if I look back in my Slack message history, because Mark sent me this article about him.
Mhm.
If I looked back in my Slack history to like 2019, I can probably find it. But I saw this interesting video though, where basically like this guy's like a world-class poker player,
Mhm.
and they would like to the point where like casinos would pay him to come play there, and they would generally they would pay him like something like they basically give him like $500,000 in like free chips to come
Mhm.
play. And he would never play more than what they gave him. And he would do that at like on a weekend. He'd go to like, he'd line up like 10 different casinos. And he would hit big on some of the, $500,000 he was given to gamble with, and he would lose others. And his point was like, as long as I never play with
Without house money.
like he just makes money touring casino circuits. It's like, it's crazy, right? But like that's a calculated approach.
It's setting a boundary. It's
somebody
setting a boundary
not
and a limit.
playing with not
Right.
playing with addictive qualities.
Right.
But then again, the people that are gambling at the top of their game, right? The reason they're at the top of their game is because they're not playing. Like they're playing calculated.
Mm-hmm. It's a calculated risk.
They're playing a calculated game. They're not playing an addictive game.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, we talked a lot about addiction tonight. That wasn't really the intent, but sort of where it went. I mean, but that's the bottom line, right?
It's a part of it. It's
a big part.
It's a part of mental health, right? It is. I
mean, in this digital era, mental health is a problem. It really is.
I think it's just becoming a bigger problem.
Statistics are indicating it is trending up. I think there's something like depression among adolescent females jumped from like 28% to like 48% or something, like absurd.
It's alarming.
It was pretty alarming.
And that's what led us to this conversation in the first place. Like mental health, video games, both are very, very close and things that I'm very passionate about. And I think they go hand in hand the more that it becomes like a social norm, right? With that being said, tell the people what you're all about, where they can help the cause.
That's true. We are a nonprofit organization that has community service programs aimed at helping not just military and veterans, although we do have programs specifically for military and veterans, but we also have programs for anybody with a brain, spine, psychiatric injury or illness that they want help with. So go ahead, scan our QR code. You can visit our YouTube channel or go to our website, brainandspinegroup.org. Read about our community service programs. And if you want to join us, even if you're not local, we meet locally with our support groups every other week for non-military members. We meet with the military members weeks in between. So if you are not a military member, but you struggle with a mental health problem and you would like to meet with us, we would be more than happy to speak with you and get you involved in our community. We meet in person in New Jersey every other week, and we open those meetings up for people outside the local area to join us virtually. So if you want to find out about those programs, you want to read about them, understand more about what we do as a nonprofit organization, or where you can get help with us, support from us, you can do that by going to our website, brainandspinegroup.org. If you can empathize and understand this mission that we have as a nonprofit organization, you want to support us, You can do that by scanning the QR code. You can do it through our YouTube channel or on the website, because we rely on the support of our community to do what we do. Right? We're committed to providing education both to the public and professionals about brain and spine health and health care. We have research teams that are committed to solving problems needed to improve the future of brain and spine health. And we have community service programs where we get down in the dirt with our family, with our community members that need support for their brain and spine injuries and illnesses. So if you want to support any or all of those programs, we just ask that you would, consider donating. And if you can't donate financially, you can donate with your time, sharing the stream with a friend. Anything you can do to help get the word out about our organization, about our programs, always helps. And so that's what we're all about. Anything you want to add, Josh?
Doing a lot of cool things over Brain and Spine Group. Again, very passionate about the brain, the mental health side of things. And I think it's important that we talk about it. And the more we get the word out there, the more we get people talking about it, I think that's a huge win. I think that's where it all starts. But
I agree.
That's my take.
But now we have to actually do things, right? And what does that mean? That means getting connected to a community. If you want to join our community, we hope that you would consider coming, finding us. We have more than multiple ways you can get in contact with us. So please, if you need help, please reach out to us. On that note, we are all set for next week's show. Same time, same place, Wednesday, 7 p.m. next week. We are talking about, staying on the topic of more the psychological, psychiatric side of things. We're going to be getting into the psychology of homicide next week. Why do killers kill people? That's the question we want to answer. I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I think if we've learned anything, these
chances are we'll get derailed.
Kind of
guarantee it.
Set a launching pad, but we sort of head off in whatever direction is interesting. So if you want to talk about the psychology of homicide, why murderers kill people, what brings them to that point, join us next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. We're going to be talking about it. Before we shut down, our question, Josh, what's your favorite Nintendo 64 game? Answer in the chat. Tell us what your favorite Nintendo 64 game is.
My answering?
Yeah, go ahead. Hit
WWF No Mercy. Best
Ooh,
wrestling video game ever created.
The funny thing is, my mom never wanted us to play violent video games because she thought it would make us violent as children. Wrestling fit in that category. Even though my brother and I grew up wrestling our whole lives. But in her mind, professional wrestling and traditional wrestling were two very different things. Professional wrestling will yield violence. Regular wrestling is an outlet for athletic energy for boys. Anyway, I guess it worked out. We both joined the Marine Corps and went and fought in wars overseas, so we're not very violent individuals.
At all.
So anyway, the point of that whole background story is that in 1997, I think, it was John Elway's last season. For Chris, my brother was a huge Denver Broncos fan. I mean, as kids, that was like his team. And we had cousins who lived in Denver. So my parents put both my brother and I on a plane, flew us out to Denver to stay with our cousins so that we could go to a Denver Broncos game at Mile High Stadium. So I did get to see John Elway play in his last season at Mile High Stadium. But I think this is 1997. So I was 7. My brother was probably 8 or 9. And we're just these two kids hanging out at my uncle's house. His kids are older because my uncle, my dad's the youngest of 8 kids. His brother is much older than him, so his kids are naturally older. So I think they were like, the 2 youngest were like high school, and the 2 oldest were like college. Like, I just remember like waking up and there'd be like a 24 rack of beer just like drained, like empty cans next to the trash can, and just being like, what happened last night, right? I was like, they're just like college kids hanging out, like friends home from college, smashing beers, playing N64. Anyway, they went out, they bought an N64 while we were there. They had the WWE like SmackDown or Raw or whatever it was. My brother and I just spent the whole week playing WWE because we're like, Mom would never let us play this game if we were at home. So that's my
That's the best, man.
about
The
that.
best game to pick up and play.
That was a good one. I had a blast playing that one. Bishop is GoldenEye. GoldenEye.
Always a classic. Got to crouch down his odd job and just.
Yeah. We never had that game. I think that probably also fit in my mother's list of
violent category
games. But you know, my brother and I, because my mother didn't let us play shooter games, we grew up to despise guns and weapons, and we would never ever touch a gun. So you know, it's a good thing we were brought up that way.
Correct.
Let's see. I don't know. I have very fond memories of Donkey Kong 64.
Super Mario 64 is another good one.
I never really got. We didn't have that one. I never really got into it.
There's like the jet ski game. You ever play that game? That was fun. It's like you just rode around on jet skis. It was like Mario Kart with jet skis.
No, I remember there was this one game.
Wave Race. That's what it was. Wave Race.
Oh, that sounds vaguely familiar. We used to play this Wave Runner game every time we go to Chuck E. Cheese.
Hey. Yeah.
Like that was one of those where you get like on the actual Wave Runner. We used to play that all the time. My dad would get into that one.
I used to love the Daytona or the Cruise in California. Like when you sit down in it, and then that was my favorite one at like arcades. I love racing games too.
Yeah. But
basically any game where you could compete, I just loved. I love racing games, I love fighting games.
But that was different, right? Like we would compete in those games where it's like, all right, your turn, you go. Like see what score you can get, and then the next person would go. But what else was good? I remember there was this 1080 was what it was called. The snowboarding.
Oh, that was like a GameCube. Yeah, I played that for
N64.
It was N64. I'm thinking of
that game.
SSX Tricky was the one I played for like GameCube. It was like same concept, but it was like much familiar. Yeah.
And then another great game memory I have was from Sega Genesis. There was this game Road Rage, I think it was called.
Road Rage was incredible.
Where you could like roll up on a motorcycle and like whip somebody with a chain.
Oh, dude, I would play that game for hours. My dad would watch me play that game.
I'm amazed my mother let me play that game. But yeah, that was a good one.
Twisted Metal.
That was what PlayStation, right?
Yeah. Oh,
my friend Nick, who lived down the road, had Twisted Metal. Oh, I love that. Was a fun one.
Twisted Metal.
I used to like being the little tank because there was two tanks. There was a little one and there was a big one.
Yeah, I forget that dude's name. Honestly, it was like Axel or something.
Tank. Axel, I think, was the big one.
He was like the guy with tires. But I played. What did I play? I played Grand Theft Auto 2, which is where it was still top down, and like that game was great.
Grand Theft Auto was on Mom's
PlayStation
band list.
Oh yeah,
we were allowed to play Grand Theft Auto.
My dad bought me all those games. He got me all the games.
That was on our band list.
Mom didn't want me to have them. Dad was cool with it.
I'm trying to think what to play on PlayStation. Maybe Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I played on PlayStation.
Man, that game, one of the best games of all time.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 was pretty.
And Underground was good too.
Underground, I think
that may have been Dreamcast. I may have had that for Dreamcast.
I never had a Dreamcast. Yeah. One of the things. And PlayStation, N64 were kind of contemporaries.
PS2,
and Xbox, right?
Yeah, PS2 than the original Xbox.
I had Xbox. I never had a PS2.
I had them both because I was a nerd.
Wow. Jeez. Yeah. We didn't have that kind of money. You must have grown up real rich.
That's all I would ever ask for.
I had an Xbox with Halo. And then it was like, that was like where Halo 1 was like the last.
Gears of War.
Halo 1 and Xbox One in general was like the last bastion of like offline gaming for me. Halo 1. I remember playing a lot of Baldur's Gate on Xbox. I love Baldur's Gate.
I played Oblivion on the original. No, that may have been Xbox 360. Yeah, Gears, Halo, and COD those are my go-tos.
Yeah. Halo. I only played Halo 1, but I played Halo 2.
2 was the multiplayer.
Halo 2 was like that was the first that was like my introduction to internet gaming, and it was like everything was about. I mean, then from there was World of Warcraft, and I mean, once you hit World of Warcraft, it was like, what other games worth playing? Like, this is literally the best game in the world at the time. I mean, everybody played that game.
Yeah, I played. I didn't get into World of Warcraft until the end of Burning Crusade, and then I didn't fully get into it until Wrath of the Lich King.
I mean, I played it almost from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
I never had that's the thing. I never had a computer really that I could put games on.
Oh, see, I had to go out and get a computer just to play World of Warcraft. So I had like two close friends, my friend Steve and my friend Zach. We were like best buds all through middle school. We went to the same church. We went to the same school. So it was like we'd see each other at school. Then we go to church, see each other, hang out at youth group, whatever the case was. Right? We just hung out all the time. They both got World of Warcraft like as soon as it came out. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't have a computer. There's like no way I could play it. And I think the first thing was, so then this was like right around freshman year of high school. And it was like halfway through freshman year of high school or something like that, that both of them moved like same, like I think the summer after freshman year or something like that. Right. One of their dads got like transferred to Hong Kong for work. So he like moved to Hong Kong. Other one's dad got moved to Texas. Like they both moved like at the same time. Like, and it was like, I went from like having like my friends to like nobody. And their plan was like, you got to get this game, World of Warcraft. That's how we're going to like stay friends while like I'm in Hong Kong and, you know, you're in Texas. And like, this is going to be the thing that holds us together. Right. And so I was like, I somehow I was able to like get a computer and the game, and it was just all downhill from there. My life never recovered.
Yep.
But yeah. But I mean, you can't beat the 16-man LAN parties of Halo 1. You just can't. I mean, my mom loved.
I still love doing the divider, the screen, the four screen where you're like,
yeah. Well, it's like, so get this, right? I mean, you think about like a TV now. Mm-hmm. We would, I mean, you think back then, right? You go to one person's house. Where are you going to get 4 TVs in one house so that way 16 people can play?
Yeah.
So it's like one person would like bring a TV. You're like, all right, got one. Then you'd have like, you'd be like, we can bring the TV from downstairs upstairs. Yep. So then it's like, okay, now you got 3. Well, where are you going to get the 4 TV from? I mean, a house back then rarely had more than like an upstairs and a downstairs TV.
Yeah.
At best. I remember we had this old TV. I mean, this thing had to be, I mean, like an iPad screen. Mm-hmm. Like the screen is a big, you know, tube kind of TV, but like, you know, in reality, it's like literally this big. I mean, it had to be like a 13-inch screen.
Yep.
Split 4 ways.
Yep.
So it's like the 4 people are sitting there playing Xbox, probably basically looking at an iPhone screen.
Yep. It's the best.
It was crazy. But it's like literally we'd have all 16 people over. You know, you'd have 2 TVs in one bedroom, 2 TVs in the other one, cords running down the hall to connect everyone's Xboxes into a router.
Yep.
8 people stacked into one bedroom. I mean, I'm literally sitting in one of the rooms that we used to have a LAN party in. There would be 8 people in here with 2 TVs playing Halo in this room. And then anytime like a round was over, the winning team would run down the hall, kick the door down, start yelling at the other team about how bad they are, and then run back to their room for the next game.
Yep.
I mean, how much better is that than internet games?
Let's get a Brain and Spine Group LAN party.
We might have to. Maybe a LAN fundraiser.
Yeah.
We got so many great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but then it's
pizza
like,
party.
In my mom's mind, she's like, this is great. Have all these kids. I mean, she probably didn't love having 16 kids in her house, but in her mind, she's like, this is better than like my son off running around doing who knows what.
Right.
Right. You know, at least I know he's here. He's having, you know, good, clean fun. Buy a couple pizzas and feed everyone. But yeah, I mean, it brought people together who would have never hung out.
Yep.
I remember there was this kid from up the road, is a complete dork. Never talked to him once in my life. And we just needed a 16th guy. So we're like,
that 16th man.
Get the nerd from up the street.
Get Timmy. Get Timmy over here.
Next thing you know, this kid you never hung out with, you're in there just talking smack to each other, having a great time.
And that's the good side of video games.
Times, man. Yeah. Different times. And kids will never understand that. They'll never understand. I'm glad I got that experience. I wish it lasted longer, but I think that life of LANing video games, it was too much of a short-lived period in the history of
There's like that video of like or not a video. There's like that picture, that classic picture of a LAN party where there's the one kid like taped to the ceiling. Like,
yep. I think
Oh,
actually, if you dig around Facebook, there's probably a picture of me taped to like the top of the locker room shower or something like that in our wrestling locker room.
Oh man.
Ugh.
On that note,
Anyway, on that note, Bishop still has 4 Xboxes. I mean, I remember there's people like that would build like LAN setups in their basement with like big screen TVs. And at one point it was like a thing where they'd be like, you can host your party here for, $300 and $5 a head or something. Like people tried to make it like a venue that you could like rent out. Like, okay.
Those are coming back.
Bishop's like, I'm charging.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, we've been rambling about video games long enough. Next week, join us for the psychology of murderers. We're going to talk about what's going on inside their brains. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern.